Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm reviewing The Last of Us Part 2 for the PS4. The Last of Us Part 2 is an action-adventure game developed by Naughty Dog. The game continues the journey of Ellie and Joel in a post-apocalyptic world where a virus has decimated society. The second installment introduces some new characters to the story, including Dina, a love interest for Ellie, and Abby, who is part of a rival group that features heavily in the second half of the story. So, what is the game like to play? Well, as with the first game, it's a very brutal, violent and visceral experience. The story focuses around Ellie seeking retribution for an incident in the early game, and this sees her head to Seattle with Dina. So it's similar in a way to the first game, as in it's a road movie that's fleshed out with a huge amount of flashbacks, not just for Ellie but also for her rival Abby. The game world feels more open than in the first game, and this really helps give you a bit more freedom to take a breather from the incessant violence and combat. It's not an open world game, but there are some parts that feel huge and you can freely explore them at your leisure. But eventually you'll run into hostile humans or infected, and the combat is as tense and exciting as in the first game. You have stealth vision to visibly see your foes, and you can also go prone to crawl past hostile situations if you're low on ammo or supplies. And scavenging is one of the key gameplay features here. Ammo is scarce, so you'll have to make every bullet count. You'll be searching cupboards, bedside tables, and anything you can find you can use in your real-time crafting menu. You can make bombs, molotovs, and you can even mod your guns at workbenches to improve their effectiveness. There's pills lying around, and you can use these to level up certain skills and make you more effective, and you can find special crafting books that open up different crafting options. But in the early game, you're on the trail of Abby and you search and explore Seattle to find her. I really enjoyed this section as it felt a bit like a detective style game, as you were searching buildings, reading documents, trying to figure out who Abby's group are, what the hells went down in Seattle with the WLF and this mysterious fanatical group they're fighting. The human enemies are deadly and tactical, and some have trained dogs to help track you down. So if you hide in the grass, the dogs will just follow your scent, so you've got to use different kind of maneuvers. The gun battles are some of the most exciting and violent you'll ever experience, and every encounter will throw up a different problem as enemies use ranged explosives, flanking maneuvers and various other tactics. The infected are equally as lethal, with stalkers, runners and clickers returning, with some new breeds thrown in for good measure. Honestly though, the body count in this game, it does start to get a little bit ridiculous after a while. It's on a par with a Rambo movie or one of the Arnie classics from the late 80s, early 90s. So for me, the first half of this game was utter perfection. It was so well paced and thought out. But halfway the plot shifts from Ellie to Abby, and you'll be forced to play the whole experience from Abby's viewpoint for several hours. It's not that Abby's story is bad, far from it, but when compared to Ellie's story, it really does pale in comparison. And it seems a bit of a misstep to create such a strong momentum then completely shift the emphasis to a group that, let's be honest, no one really cares about. And from this point forward, the game never truly recovers. Personally, I think if they'd have split the campaigns, it would have made for a better experience. As in, play through with Ellie, then you unlock a second campaign to see the other side of the story with Abby's group. But the way they chose to do it definitely has a detrimental impact on both stories. Graphically, the cutscenes are exceptional and the game world looks amazing with so much detail. The character models are realistic, the lip syncing is very good in the most part. The game has a photo mode and it's been overhauled, and it's a vast improvement on the standard Naughty Dog system. It just feels more fluid and more user friendly. The sound is truly wonderful, with a stunning soundtrack created by Gustavo Santaolalla. It's very different to the first game and has a more somber tone, but it's equally as impressive. The NPC voices add a real humanity to the experience, as they'll often call out to their friends using real names. It's a very small detail, but it really adds a human element when you're killing people in the game. And the voice acting is superb, and the whole audio experience is just sheer perfection. Okay, what's good and what's bad? What's good? The gameplay feels more open and varied, the audio and visuals are stunning, the combat is even more visceral than before, it's a very well written script, Ellie's story is powerful and engrossing, and it's a much more enjoyable game in terms of gameplay compared to the first one. What's bad? The pacing of the story in the second half is horrible, and all the momentum created in the first half of the game gets wasted. Naughty Dog tried too hard to create a story where you empathise with everyone, but it really doesn't work. The enemies are a little too accurate with their guns. Toward the end of the game, it does descend into a little bit of a farce, and it tries to cover too many social issues, like a lazy representation of religious extremism. Okay, so what is the verdict? The Last of Us Part 2 is an amazing game at times. In particular, the first half of the game, where the main focus is on Ellie, Joel and their group of survivors. But the game suffers from one big problem. The pacing of the story is a mess, and in particular the second half of the game derails all the good work done in the first half. Switching the story to Abby and her group for the majority of the second half of the game is a bold move, but one that ultimately fails. It does more damage to the overall enjoyment of the story than I thought possible. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for flashbacks and enriching the character's backstory, but having to play through several hours with Abby and her group got really old really quickly. It doesn't matter how many good deeds they do, it doesn't matter how many acts of kindness you see them do in these flashbacks. In the end, you'll still look at Abby and her crew in the same way. They're just a bunch of murderers like everybody else. You know, Ellie and Joel are no different. It's the apocalypse. Everyone is a piece of shit murderer. But Ellie and Joel, they're our piece of shit murderers. Because we've been through the journey with them from the start. So to expect us to suddenly care about another group equally is unrealistic. I also think a lot of gamers will struggle to get through the middle part of the game as the flashbacks go on for way too long. Just the way they've paced it, it makes you lose interest in the main story, which is all about Ellie, and Ellie ultimately is what The Last of Us is all about. But on the plus side, the gameplay itself is vastly improved with more variety and interesting elements to make the physical gameplay more enjoyable. It's just a shame the story got compromised along the way. So with all that being said, my score for The Last of Us Part 2 is 8 out of 10. Okay, that was the review. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. This is Photography Gamer, signing off. Thank you.